In this video, we're going to show you a variety of different sharpening techniques to correct softness and prepare your images for printing. I'm going to start by looking at the detail panel inside Adobe Camera Raw. You can also find similar sharpening tools in Lightroom 4. Now I'm working on a TIFF file here, but you can also open RAW files or JPEGs into ACR in exactly the same way. So I'm going to right click on the file here in Adobe Bridge and choose Open in Camera Raw, and that opens the ACR interface. Now the detail panel is the third in from the left, so let's click on that and then let's double click the zoom tool, and this will bring us to 100% view. It's always best to judge sharpening at 100% because this will give you an accurate depiction of the pixels. So I'm going to hold the space bar and drag around the image until we find an area of detail over the spider here. And I'm going to start by upping my sharpening amount slider, and this controls the overall intensity of the sharpening effect, kind of like a volume dial. So I'm just going to bring that up to about 40, and you can see the effect that's had. We're also slightly increasing the noise here, so I'm going to combat that by adjusting the rest of these sliders. Now the radius slider here controls the area in which the sharpening occurs around the edges. So a larger radius setting will widen the area of sharpening. So if I bring that up to about 1.2, that works pretty well for this particular image. And I always check the sharpening effect by toggling the preview here on and off. Now the detail slider works by increasing local contrast around edges. So it's most effective on images with lots of texture. So I'm going to leave that at 0 for this particular image, and I'm going to hold down Alt while dragging my masking slider here. And you can see this gives me a grayscale view of the image, and any areas that appear in black as I drag are going to be masked from the sharpening effect. So I only want to sharpen my spider, so I'm going to drag that up to, I think, about like 40. And you can see how that works where the black areas are hidden from the sharpening effect. And now if I toggle the preview on and off, you can see how we're sharpening these details around the spider, but we're not actually increasing the image noise too much. So that's the right amount of sharpening for this particular image. So I'm going to click Open Image to bring the image into Photoshop. Now I'm going to show you a few different ways to sharpen your image inside Photoshop. First of all, I'm going to bring up my Layers panel by going to Window, Layers, and I'm going to click the Create Layer icon here at the bottom to give me a new empty layer above my background there. And I'm going to show you how we can apply selective sharpening to this layer using the Sharpen tool, which you'll find in the Tools panel over here, along with the Blur tool. Now the Sharpen tool didn't used to work very well, but since CS5 the tool's been updated and it's now a very useful tool for selective sharpening. We can also check this option up here to sample all layers, which means we can apply sharpening to our empty layer while sampling from the background underneath. So I'm going to zoom in a bit closer using Command or Control and plus. That's Command and plus on a Mac and Control and plus on a PC, just to zoom in a bit closer. Then I'm going to hold the space bar to drag around. And then I'm just going to resize my brush tip by using the square brackets on my keyboard. The right square bracket key will make it larger, and the left square bracket key will make it smaller. So I'm just going to choose a brush about that size and then just paint over my spider here. And you'll see how we're applying our brush strokes on this empty layer while sampling from the background to sharpen up these areas around the spider. And I'm also going to sharpen up this line here. It's best to use this tool at a strength of around 20%. You don't want the strength to be too high because this means that you can build up the effect gradually over the spider. And if I zoom in a little closer here, you can see if I toggle the layer on and off, how we've sharpened these areas around here selectively. So hit Ctrl-0 to go back out to full screen. And that's how you can use the Sharpen tool to apply selective sharpening on a separate layer. Now I'm just going to turn that layer off because I want to show you another method for sharpening called high pass sharpening, and this involves using the high pass filter. So I'm going to begin by duplicating my background just by dragging it to the Create New Layer icon, and I'm going to right click on the background layer here and choose Convert to Smart Object. This is really useful because it means I can apply the high pass filter non-destructively, which gives me the option to control the strength even after I've applied the filter. Now before I do that, I'm just going to go to the blend mode options here at the top of the layers panel and change the blend mode from normal to overlay. And let's just zoom in a little closer to our spider as well. Now I'm going to go to Filter, Other, High Pass. And I'll set the radius to about 2 pixels and click OK. And now if I toggle that top layer on and off there, you can see how we're getting a nice sharpening effect, which works well on images like this, because it only sharpens the edges and it leaves the rest of the image untouched. Which is useful when you have a lot of soft areas like this image here, because you can really sharpen up those edge details on the spider without affecting the image noise around here. And the great thing about applying this filter on a smart object layer is so I can change the filter settings at any time simply by double clicking the word high pass here, and this will re-enter the high pass options. So if I like, I can jack the radius right up to 100, and you can see that over sharpens the image. If I bring it back down to about 3, that'll probably give me good results, right around there I think. If I click OK again and toggle that layer on and off, you can see the sharpening effect that has. Now finally, I'm going to show you how to use the Unsharp Mask filter, which can be useful when preparing your images for printing. So first of all, I need to crop my image to a specific size, and I can do that just by going to Image, Image Size. And I'm just going to set it to 6 inches wide at 300 pixels per inch, which should give me a size around 6 by 4 inches. And I'm going to click OK. And now I need to sharpen the image for this particular size print. So I'm just going to duplicate my background layer again, and again right click and select Convert to Smart Object, because we can also apply the Unsharp Mask filter on a smart object layer. Then I'm going to go to Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask. And up pops the Unsharp Mask box. Now let's just drag it over an area of detail here. Now again, we have a similar set of sliders to the ones found in the Detail panel in ACR. The Amount slider will control the intensity of the sharpening effect. The Radius slider will control the area in which the sharpening occurs on either side of the edges. And the Threshold slider allows you to restrict the sharpening effect by setting a minimal difference in tonal value between 2 pixels to be recognized as an edge. So it's useful if you want to protect your image from noise. And if I just drag over here, you can see noise is starting to creep in around here. So if I drag the threshold up to about 2 or 3, that just restricts the noise from affecting these areas. Now I can bring the amount up to around 80 or 90. Somewhere about 100 is usually good for preparing your image for printing. And in an image like this, I want to up the radius slightly to about 1.2 just to increase the sharpening around the edges. And this is good for images where there are a lot of soft areas like this. If we had a landscape, we might want to reduce the radius to about 0.8, but for this particular image, 1.2 works well. And I can just click and hold over the preview here to see a before and after of the sharpening effect. And I think that's looking pretty good. We're getting a nice amount of sharpening, but we're not creating any unsightly halos or increasing the image noise. So I'm going to click OK to apply that. And as before, if you want to tweak the settings, we can simply go back, double click the filter here, and bring back the box. Maybe I just want to reduce the amount slightly to about 80. So now my image is ready for printing at 6 by 4 inches. And it's worth mentioning that with any of these sharpening amounts and settings, the best approach is always to judge it by eye, because the right amount of sharpening will depend on the image size and the image content. And when in doubt, it can be useful to maybe push the sharpening amount too far and bring it back like I've done here. So there you go. That's how you can sharpen your images in a variety of ways using different tools and commands in Photoshop and Adobe Camera Raw.